Okay, guys, so we're gonna continue working with functions. The focus for today's class will be understanding on how to interpret graphs. Okay, so that will be the focus. But before we talk about that, this is something that you've already done. Okay, so today's class will be more of a review than anything. But for the starter question, I really want you to pay attention because this is one of the things that students were struggling with last week. Okay, so the function notation, right? So I guess in grade 9, what you mainly saw was instead of f of x is equals to 2x minus 5, you saw y is equals to 2x minus 5, something like that. Okay, but now we're going to use the function notation, right, which is f of x. It could also be y of x if you want. Okay, it doesn't really matter what letter you choose. But the most common one is f, okay, f of x. That's the most common way to express a function. Now, why do we do this, right? Why are we using this function notation? It's not to confuse you. It's actually a shortcut that will speed things up. Okay, so I'm asking you to calculate these values. But before I start, before I let you do that, before you can pause the video. The one thing I'm gonna point out is that f of 0. Okay, this is a shortcut that says find the y value, right? If you are not using the function notation, then you can rewrite this as y is equals to 2x minus 5, okay? So this is telling you to find the y value when x is equals to 0, right? But as you can see, that takes a lot of time to write that, right? F of 0 is a faster way of saying that. Okay, so I'm gonna just ask you to pause the video and answer these questions, but I'm gonna continue. So how do I know that how do I know that I have to find the y value when x is 0? Because look, if I compare f of x to f of 0, then you can see that inside the brackets over here, I have x, but inside the brackets over here, I have a 0, okay? So that indicates that I have replaced x by 0, okay? Which is what you have to do, okay? So to solve a question like this is how you would do it, okay? You would just say that f of 0 is equals to, okay, is equals to 2 times x. But now this x, right, if you have x over here, then you should have x over here. But now this x has been replaced by 0, okay? So instead of putting 2x, you're going to put 2 bracket 0, right? So everywhere you see x, you're going to have to replace that by 0. You only see x once, but eventually, when you go to grade 11, 12, you're going to see many x's. But the idea is the same, right? So you're going to have to replace that x by a 0. And I'm using brackets because it's multiplication, minus 5, okay? So this just means that 2 times 0 is 0. So this just equals to minus 5, right? In other words, when x is equals to 0, right? When x is equals to 0, y is equals to minus 5, okay? That's what it means, okay? Using the function notation, let's work this out. So this is asking me what is my y value when x is equals to minus 10, right? So all you have to do is, as you can see, inside my brackets, I have x, but now I'm replacing that x by minus 10, okay? So that means everywhere I see x here on the right-hand side of the equation, every time I see x, I need to change that with negative 10. So it's going to be 2 brackets, right, because it's multiplication, times negative 10 minus 5. So this is minus 20, right? 2 times negative 10 is minus 20 minus 5, which is just equals to minus 25. Now this question is slightly different. Okay, this question is very different from f of 12 is equals to what? Okay, f of 12 is equals to what tells me that I know what my x value is. X is just 12, right? And I'm looking for my y value. Okay, this is a different question. Now over here, I'm telling you that f of x is equals to 12, not x, f of x. So how do you do a question like this, right? F of x is equals to 12. So that means I don't have to replace x by 12. I have to replace f of x by 12. So remember f of x, right up here, is equals to 2x minus 5. So I'm going to have to replace this guy, f of x, right? This is f of x. I'm going to have to replace that by 12. So I'm going to replace this by 12 and then just solve for x, okay? So this question is basically asking me when y is equals to 12, right? When y is equals to 12, what is x equals to? When y is equals to 12, what is x? Um, what is x? Okay, what is x equals to? Okay, so now here you have to do a little bit of algebra, right, guys? So again, because you're solving for something, right? You have something, an algebraic expression equals to 12, right? So you have to use BEDMAS in reverse direction, right? So BEDMAS, right? For some of you who don't know, who don't like who are having a hard time with algebra, just remember to do BEDMAS in reverse direction. Okay, so that means I need to get rid of my minus addition and subtraction first. I'm going to get rid of this minus 5 again, because if I get rid of the 5 and the 2, then I have x all by itself, right? So it's just a question of what should you get rid of first, and the answer comes from here. Always get rid of addition and subtraction first by doing the opposite, right? So the opposite of minus 5 is plus 5, so this cancels out, and then 17 is equals to 2x. So then you divide by 2, right? Do the opposite, divide by 2. So that means that x is equals to 8.5. Okay, so 8 times 2 is 16 and then a half. So just understand the difference, I guess, between this notation f of 0 and when f of x is equals to something. Okay, so this tells you that my x value, right? This tells you that my x value has to be replaced by 0. Okay, this over here tells you that your f of x value, right? F of x, not x, f of x needs to be replaced by that value, which is 12, okay? So those are two completely different questions, okay? Please understand the difference between the two, and if you're still having a hard time, come see me on Thursday, okay? I'm going to be holding office hours again on Thursday this week. Not a lot of students showed up last week, so usually that's a good sign. That means you're understanding. But the students who did show up were you know, we're struggling with this. Okay, so I'm just hoping that some of you, like, I'm hoping that you're understanding this because this is important. Okay, this will come in handy when you do 20-1. Okay, next year. So properties of a graph, okay, can provide you with a lot of useful information. There's just a couple of things I'm going to point out over here. So when you're so this is your y value, right? You should know this. This is let me just change the color. So this is your y, this is your x, this is your x-axis, this is your y-axis if you want. Okay, when your y value is increasing, your function is increasing. Okay, so that's what they're trying to tell you over here. But sometimes your function increases more rapidly than uh, than than it does other times. Okay, what do I mean by that? So let's say if someone has five, like let's just pick I don't know, Elon Musk. Okay, let's say he has $5 billion in his bank account, and after 2 days, he has 11 billion. Okay, so that's a steep increase. Okay, just after 2 days, he was able to double his wealth, right? So that's a steep increase. But your function, but what if let me change this. What if your function was increasing this way? Okay, so this way. Okay, something like that. Okay, so this is Elon Musk again, right? After, let's say, 15 days, right? So this is 14, this probably is 15, right? Because this is 2. So the number in between has to be half of that, which is 1. Okay, so let's say on the 15th day, Elon Musk's wealth is now 11 billion. Okay, 11 billion, because if this is 10, right, this has to be 11, which is the same as this, but this increase is much steeper than this one. Okay, so the quickly your function is increasing, the steeper it will be. Okay, and it's the same thing for decrease. Okay, so for example, let me just erase all this. For example, um, over here, you see the function is decreasing, but it's decreasing a lot more quickly than it's decreasing over here, okay? So sometimes they might ask you questions, okay? So maybe let me use a different color for this. So you see this, the decrease over here, right? So Elon Musk was at $8 billion over here, and after 1 day, not 8, I think it's 9. It's 8. Okay, it's actually 8. So he was at 8 billion right over here. And then after 1 day, his net worth became 4 billion. That's a steep increase. Okay, so he lost 4 billion in 1 day. Okay, which is a lot faster than what you will see over here, because so if this is 7, 7 plus 4 is 11, and he's over here on the 11th day, right? So on the 11th day, he is from um 4 billion to 2 billion. So he only lost 2 billion in this case, in the same amount of time. Okay, so again, I'm just using Elon Musk and money. I think that illustrates the idea a little better. But in this case, it could be anything. Okay, I think money is something that it's easier to visualize, right? But it could be anything. And because it's not mentioned over here, I just went with money. So this is your, again, y-axis, this is your x-axis, right? Um, so I guess one question that you might be asking yourself is, how do you know that this is a moderate decrease? It's not steep, and this one is steep, okay? They will always ask you to compare two branches, okay? They will ask you to compare, let's say, this blue branch to the red one, and then you'll have to tell them which one is decreasing steeply. Okay, so decreasing, the steeper one will always decrease faster. Okay, that's kind of like, you know um the 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 idea behind this. Okay, so and it's the same for increase. Okay, it's exactly the same for increase. So now let's continue. So this is essentially what you will have to do today, right? I'm going to give you a graph, and then I'm going to ask you questions based on the graph. So the first question is, so this is about a scuba diver, right? So initially he was, on the surface, I guess, right? But then he starts diving, and this represents the depth of his dive in meters. Okay, so the depth. So that's why it's positive. But if this was the height or something, then it could have been negative, right? Because depth, when you measure when you measure something, right, it's always positive. So that's why the values are positive. Um, and then this tells you the time. Okay, so this, again, this is your independent variable, right? This is your x, and this is your dependent variable, right? As the time changes, the depth of the diver changes. Okay, so first question, how many minutes did the dive last? Well, he started from here, right? This tells you the height. So you went here, and then here, 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 and then finally he came back up over here. So what is the value, right? Because remember, when we're talking about minutes, we have to look at the x value. So what is this value over here? So if this is 4, then the value in between has to be half that, right? Because there's only two marks. So this has to be 2. So that means if this is 28, right? If this is 28, then that has to be 2 more than 28. So I guess 30 minutes, okay? 30 minutes for that. Uh, at what time did the diver stop her descent? Okay, so when did she stop her descent? So that means, when did she stop? When did the depth kind of like reach its maximum? Okay, so as you can see, you might think that she stopped her descent over here. You might, but then she's maybe resting or something, and then she starts diving again, right? So this is not the answer, even though it kind of makes sense. This is the answer, because right after she reaches a depth of 20 meters, right, she doesn't go below that. Okay, so I don't know, maybe she's just checking out some fishes or something down there, or resting, and then she starts coming back up. Okay, so this would be the answer. So at what time, right? At what time? So we have to figure out what that time is. So it's right over here. So it's between 8 and 12. Remember, 8, we're increasing by 2, so this has to be 10 minutes. Okay, and now what was the greatest depth the diver reached? For how many minutes was the diver at that depth? So the greatest depth, as we've already discovered, is 20, right? So the depth, the answer is 20. So this is the first part of your answer for this question. Okay, so the first part. The second part is, for how many minutes was the diver at that depth? So she was at that depth, right? So she was at that depth over here, from here to here. Now this is constant, right? This is not an increase, nor is it a decrease. Maybe I should have pointed that out. So this is what we call when there is no change, right? When there's no change, this is what the graph will look like. Okay, over here, as you can see. So we kind of call this the constant value, but that basically means that there's no change. Okay, now let's go back to the question. So there was no change in her depth from 10 minutes to this amount of time, which is in between. So 12 plus 2, that's 14, right? So from 14 to 10, there was no change, right? So she was at the depth of 20 meters for 4 minutes, right? So because 14 minus 10 is 4, okay, 4 minutes, okay? And I think this is kind of um, conceptual. I think you've done a lot of questions like this, right? So this is kind of like what today's class will look like, and hopefully I'm not gonna make this video too long. And the homework and everything should be fairly straightforward. Let's just do two more questions for practice. So another graph, right? So your independent variable, right? Your x variable. So this is your x-axis if you want. This is your y-axis. So your independent variable is mass. Dependent variable is the cost. Okay, so the first question, which bag is the most expensive? What does it cost? So when we're talking about cost, we have to look at the y value, right? So because they're saying the most expensive, then it has to be the greatest y value. So it's C, right? So bag C is the answer. So for, let me just write it over here. So for question A, the answer is C, and then it's a two-part question. What does it cost? Well, C is over here, but that's not given to us. So we know that this much is 2, so this has to be 1, right? So that means each mark is increasing by 1. So cost is in dollars, right? So the units are given over here for you, so it's $7, okay? Question B, which bag has the least mass? Least, we're talking about mass, okay? So now we're gonna have to look at the x-axis, and the smallest one over here seems to be B, okay? So B is the smallest one. Let me just kind of clean this up a little bit. So B is the smallest one, and then they're asking me how much does it weigh, right? What is the mass? Okay, so again, if this is 400, then in between it's gonna have to be 200, right? So if that is 200, if this is 200, then this has to be 400. What is this mass? Okay, so this is 400, then this is 600, right? But the dot is in between 600 and 400. So we could say 500. Okay, again, this is an approximation, but 500 should be the answer, okay, because it's right in between, okay? So I would say 500. Which bag has the least mass? What is this mass? Okay, I would say 500. Now on to the next one, right? Because again, guys, if this is 400, then this has to be 600. But this is in between 400 and 600, so that has to be 5, okay? Question C, which bags have the same mass? Okay, so we're talking about mass. Just be careful, right? So as you can see, A and E, they have the same cost, not the same mass, okay? When we're talking about same mass, that means, because mass is my x, my independent variable, right? So it's my x, we're looking at the x variable over here. So essentially what the question is asking, which 2 points have the same x coordinate? And it's these two, okay? So question C, the answer is D and E. And then is there something else? What is the mass? The mass is right over here. So that's 1,800. Okay, it's 1,600 plus 200. So that's 1,800, again, grams, because the units are coming from here, okay? And then question D, Which bags have the same cost? Okay, good. So now let's distinguish this from these 2 points. See, same cost. Remember, cost is my y, right? So we're the question that they're asking is which 2 points have the same y coordinate, and it's A and E. Okay, so A and E, and the cost is exactly $4. Okay, and then finally, question E, which of bags C or D has the better value for money? Okay, so which one would you purchase? That's what it means. So as you can see, C is more expensive. Okay, C is more expensive, and it contains less. So if you read the question, I think over here, it's each point on this graph represents a bag of popcorn. Okay, um, so um, C is more expensive and has less popcorn in it, right? So why would you purchase C? I would rather purchase D. I get more popcorn and I pay less. Okay, so I'm gonna go with D. Okay, that's what it means, better value for money. So that means I'm paying less, right? Because the Y value is less than this, and I'm getting more, right? I'm getting more. So I'm obviously gonna go with the D over here, okay? I hope that kind of makes sense. So what I'm going to ask you to do is do this question, pause the video, do this on your own. It's very similar to the other one. Okay, so I'm going to go again. The answers for this is given in the book. So I'm just going to go over this very, very quickly. So here we have each point on this graph represents a person. Explain your answer to each question below. So your X is age and your Y, right? So this is your Y. This is your X, okay? Y is the height. So, which person is the oldest? What is her age? So, I would go, right? Age is X, so the highest X value is G, okay? So, the point G has the highest X value, I should say. What is her age? Again, it's in between 16 and 20, right? So if this is 4, then the number in between has to be half as much. So it's increasing by 2, right? So if that is 16, and this has to be 18. 18. She's 18 years old, okay? Now for this one, which person is the youngest? What is her age? So using the same logic, right? We could say person A is the youngest. What is her age? 0 years old. So this kind of makes no sense, but maybe because they're a few months old, right? So like if you're 9 months old, then that's not 1 year, right? That's less than 1 year. So that's why I guess it's 0 for them. Which two people have the same height? The same height. So we're talking about the y value, right? Height is your y value. So which 2 points have the same y coordinate? It's actually B and C. Okay, so this one will be B, oops, B, let me rewrite that a little better, B and C. And what is the height? It's 100. And again, if you don't know what the units are, just look at your graph. It tells you centimeters, okay? This one over here, which two people have the same age? Now, age is your X, right? So we're looking at 2 points that have the same X value, or the X coordinate. So it's actually this one. So D and E. What is the age? So it's in between 8 and 12, and it's increasing by 2, so it has to be 10 years, right? And then finally, hold on, this has to be 10 years. And then finally, which of the person B or C is taller for her or his age? B and C. Okay, B and C. So we're talking about this point over here. So even though B is younger than C, right? Because B is only 2 years old and seems like C is 3. That person B is, even though he's younger or she is younger, that person still has the same height as C, right? So which person, B or C, is taller for his age? I would say B. Okay, so this one, the answer is B because they have the same height, but B is younger. So that means B is obviously taller. Okay, so by the time B becomes 3 years old, that person will probably be taller than C. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. Um, and that is it for today, guys. Okay, so just these practice some of the questions from here. You only have two questions. Practice these two questions, and hopefully, you kind of understand how to interpret graphs. This is not something new. So again, just do those two questions, 3 and 4, and that should be it for today. Okay, thank you so much.